RainReady is a program to help individuals and communities find solutions to the challenges of both too much and too little water. And I'm going to talk you through. It's recently launched, just over 6 months ago. But a lot of background research we've been doing over several years. So I'm going to talk you through kind of how we got to where we are and what the program is. And then I hopefully kind of keep connecting it back to the broader sustainability challenges that we're thinking of all the time. So just a little bit of background. The Centre for Neighbourhood Technology, we describe ourselves as an innovation laboratory for urban sustainability. So we look at place-based problems and then look at innovations that might be replicated. We have programs both in transport and housing. We have a sister affiliate, Elevate Energy, and I direct the water program. And the way we operate is fairly standard across all the programs. We do background research in particular on what's the problem, on what's the cost of doing nothing, what is it we're trying to solve. And then we test solutions, and they're normally entrepreneurial type solutions. So for those people who live locally, you'll remember IGO Cars, which was sold to Enterprise. That was the city's first car sharing club. Or Elevate Energy has the largest multifamily retrofit energy program in the United States. And you'll see that as I talk you through RainReady, that this sort of entrepreneurial side of things and how it's reflected in the program. And then having understood both what the problem is and some of the solutions and services need to be in place, we then seek to influence policy and legislation so that we can accelerate adoption. So just some of the things that I was picking up that were kind of on your program, I was thinking, this is the same kind of challenges that we're looking at. I see that you're looking at resilience zones. I'm not entirely sure what they are, but I guess that's about integration. How do you integrate solutions within a place? And RainReady is a lot about that. Stakeholder engagement, it's what we do all the time. We're always thinking about, so I noticed that you had how to leverage your purchasing or government purchasing to bring sustainability benefits. We're all the time thinking about leveraging financing. We do this sort of strange kind of planning where we're looking at what do we do in the pilot community of Midlothian, what that might look like if we scaled it up at a city scale, and what that might look like if we scaled it up at a national scale. So these things, so one day I'll be speaking to the community neighbourhood of Chatham in the south side, and another time I'll be in DC, sort of talking about what national solutions are. So it's a kind of fun way to be working. I'm always thinking about how do we speed up adoption. So there are 3 distinct approaches to the program that I think make it particularly interesting. The first is that it's very, very grassroots. And this isn't just about public engagement. It's about actually getting residents to shape the program and shape the solutions and take charge. And then it's about trying to get those problems that residents face and kind of connect them up to the big issues around climate change and sustainability. We work with very diverse partnerships. So yesterday, I think it was, I was on a conference call with Metropolitan Water Recreation District, the Army Corps of Engineers, Schneider Electric, Intel, Sprint, and Janus. So these very strange mixture of partners that we bring together. And many of these partners aren't used to collaborating. Many of them work separately. So bringing them into a room together is very interesting and unusual. And we're thinking about, every time we do anything, we're always thinking about how can we expand this nationally. So we're always thinking about what's the business model, what's the public-private partnerships we need to have in place. A lot around sort of licensing and patenting and accreditation, marketing and outreach, incentives, kind of what are the partnerships we need to have in place, and what are the standards that will help us replicate it, finance mechanisms. So sort of back to basics. How did we get into this? I was actually recruited 4 years ago to lead a program. I was the Natural Resources Director at that point, to lead a program that was called Green Infrastructure. And so does anyone not know what green infrastructure is? Okay. I suppose I was confused by green. So the first thing is, in England we don't call it green infrastructure. So when I applied for the job, I actually thought I was applying for a different job. So they were interviewing me, I was rapidly having to make it up. I thought it meant about what is the kind of mix of infrastructure you need to have in a place to make it environmentally friendly. So I learned about stormwater green infrastructure and green infrastructure. And it seemed to me that as I took up the position, they didn't obviously cotton on to the fact I had no idea what I was talking about, that we were suggesting a solution for a problem that we really had very little information about. And frankly, people didn't care that much about. So I had a program that I was going to be directed, but it just wasn't that important to the majority of people in the country. So I then kind of, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And the one thing that sort of just came up instantly, moved from England to Chicago, was flooding. So let's try and understand flooding, and let's try and figure out if that's a problem that will resonate with people. But so we started, I had an intern the first summer I worked, called Zoe from Northwestern University. She's a journalism student. I said, just go and find some flooded people and ask them what it feels like. She did 15 interviews. In 4 of those interviews, people broke down in tears, which was just sort of shocking for us. We had an engineer who'd been working with us for over 30 years at CMT. He came back from those interviews and he was just white. And he had just interviewed Elizabeth McAtee, this woman, who had repeated flooding in her home, such that she could no longer afford to repair the damage that was caused. The insurance company had dropped her. She couldn't sell the home. They had mold that was so bad that her son was having allergic reactions and had to be rushed into hospital. So she was completely trapped in this kind of horror story. And so one of the things we discovered was that flooding is often, particularly in Chicago where it's largely basement flooding, it's a very private problem. People think that it's something to do with them. They don't want to talk about it. It's disgusting. They're embarrassed. And therefore they suffer it alone, and therefore it's very stressful for them. Also, there's a sort of apparent randomness. So we went to visit one homeowner. It was remarkable. His house looked like the same as any other house on the street. It looked completely flat. And yet from his house, twice he had to leave on a boat. I mean, it just seemed amazing. So the water filled the basement. He wasn't near a river. It wasn't overnight flooding. It filled the basement and went up into the first floor so that they actually had to leave on a boat. And so we spoke to other people as well, who this sort of randomness. And they said, we never flooded at all. And there was something, the person over the street extended their garage, did some building work, or some people who did something to the sewer system, and suddenly we started to flood. There's a sort of randomness. And these were the stories that we started to get in the photos. We just said, anyone, if you flooded, just send us your photos. Just tell us about it. So this was his home. Poor guy. This was his bed, and he was in a terrible state. And that was after April 2013 flooding in the area. So we did a survey. So one of the things that people said was, well, of course this is going to flood. It is Chicago. It was built on a marsh. And then I was looking at a program that could be replicated in any city. So I needed to know whether or not it was a common problem in other cities, or whether or not Chicago was unique. So we did a survey of the 30 most populous cities in the Great Lakes, and they all suffered from flooding. But one of the things that we discovered from that was that there was a definition problem, a language problem, because most people equate the word flooding with floodplains. And so if you ask people who to Google flooding, one of the things that floodplains come up. And the kind of flooding that we're talking about doesn't necessarily occur in the floodplains. So we wanted to find out. So we found that people didn't really know whether or not they had a flooding problem because they weren't entirely sure what we were talking about, and we weren't entirely sure what was being talked about, and we needed a better definition of the problem. Before we did that, we also, in addition to the Great Lakes survey, we looked across the nation, and we looked at flash flood warnings. So these are flash flood warnings that are given when flooding is imminent or actually in progress, i.e. when they're given, someone's flooding. And what we found was that there was flooding, sorry, that's all fine, that there was flooding right across 10 major cities, right across the US, even those cities that are affected by drought. So you were just talking about LA. LA has terrible drought problems and terrible flooding problems, and it hasn't at the same time. So we then actually went into people's homes to better understand the problems facing people. One of the things we discovered is that properties often flood themselves, and we were, my own house, my previous house anyway, was in the same situation where my heavy rain would fall off the drive, go down the side of the house, and go in through the foundation. And that's an easy fix. So we just regraded the land so it no longer went down the side of the house and just shifted it away, took it into a drain and into a rain garden. Tiny. We actually lost a third of the use of our house as a result of the flooding. So, you know, tens of thousands of dollars worth of impact on our property value, solved very easily. And many of the properties that we inspect are in that situation where quite small investments could actually eliminate their problems. So these are some of the things we discovered, you know, the problems with mold, with wood just rotting away. In some cases, this is raw sewage. People talk about sort of toilet fountains of sewage just coming up, absolutely gross. And in some cases, people just can't cope, they've just left it. You know, in many cases, these are people who are, you know, they're just on the fringe already as a result of the many stresses affecting them in life, and flooding was another one. So that's kind of perhaps the most informative bit of research we did was we managed to get hold of flood damage payout data. So we did it for Cook County, aggregated by zip code, both private insurance companies and FEMA. And that really started to give, it was sort of national significance because nobody had got hold of this data before. And it really gave us a much better understanding of flooding. So for example, here's a map of Cook County. Those zip codes with the red are those that are most affected, where the most damage payouts are in Cook County. And the paler the colour, so white being the lowest, is the lowest median household income per county. So here you can see an apparent correlation between lower income and high number of damage payouts. And that map is reflected in Cook County has found the same thing, and WRD has found the same thing. So it seems to be a common picture that's emerging. And we did a survey of flood victims. We found, for example, that 70% had flooded 3 or more times within a 5-year period. And we've done many surveys since, and we found the same thing. So the key findings from this research, and it's taken us several years to do this research, is that flooding is a private and hidden problem, but it's prevalent and widespread and repetitive. And the impacts of chronic raw sewage, mold, foundation cracks, stress, and that not only is it affecting residents, but it's actually affecting economics. So we have plenty of examples of homes foreclosing as a result of flooding, and many stories of new homeowners moving into those homes, stories of people who have only just got their stuff into the garage to be shifted into their house, at which points it floods, and then the people in there haven't even got a chance to get it into their house. So these are chronic problems, and the low-income communities are worst affected. We've also discovered that the problem is mischaracterized because flood risk is formally, officially correlated to floodplains. And what we found was that damage payout data showed that you're no more likely, in Cook County, there didn't appear to be any correlation between living in a floodplain and flood risk. So it's really been misunderstood by all the main agencies. It's a problem that's both highly local, as in our case, we were flooding ourselves, and regional. In the case that many of the communities we deal with, it's a watershed problem, and it's water coming from several communities upstream, all going into the same creek, and then coming out, bursting the banks of the river. It's getting worse very quickly, and I think probably one of the things, so we've been working on legislation and policy solutions in support of green infrastructure for years, and there's a very strong lobby that acts against any development standards, and they're the realtors, the builders. And what there hasn't been is this counter voice that's saying, actually, I'm a flood victim, it matters, it's affecting my life. And so then we started to work on what the solutions were, and you can imagine, given the complexity, that's been a difficult challenge. I was kind of inspired by this diagram. It kind of gave me a aha moment. And this is a diagram of healthcare services. And for me, that was just helpful because in the debate around do we do grey infrastructure or green infrastructure, which is a debate that goes on and on, for me, this said to me, was a kind of, actually what we need is a suite of solutions, and we need many things going on. And we need the customer, in this case the homeowner, right at the centre. We need to actually understand the nature of the problems affecting them and design solutions that meet those problems. So we came up very ready. We kind of underpinned it with some core principles. We wanted a suite of solutions that were relatively affordable and quick to install. That were community-based, where the residents were actually the advocates and they were shaping this. Where we were looking both at public investment as well as private investment. So in many cases, homeowners are both the victims and the contributors to the problem. We needed residents to be engaged in the solutions and working with the municipality across the public rights of way. And we wanted solutions that added economic, social, and environmental value to the community. And we were designing an approach that could be easily replicated, standardized and accredited, and leverages multiple investment sources. So we've designed 3 services at the moment, and it could get broader as we continue. And we have 2 pilot areas. Chatham is a neighbourhood in the south suburbs of Chicago, south side of Chicago, and Midlothian there is in the south suburbs. And the areas in yellow are kind of our priority next rollout areas. We've identified them because they're high risk and low income. So I'm going to just quickly talk you through these 3 services. Rain Ready Home is based on the premise that there are quick, low-cost solutions that you can do to alleviate flooding on your property, such as a backwater valve. This is being installed by our Rain Ready Home manager, Ryan Wilson. Down to out connections and dry wells, regrading, as I just mentioned we did in our own house. You just take the water away from the side of the property and then out through this pipe and into something like a rain garden like this. And so what we do is we go into their home, inspect their property, and write this very comprehensive report in terms of what their flood risk is, how their property has been affected, and what the solutions that they might need in order to alleviate them and how much they cost. And normally we find that properties are affected by multiple types of flooding. They might have seepage through the foundation as well as backup through the drain. So we'll actually have to coordinate contractors to do that work. Might need a landscaper and a plumber. So we'll actually, should they decide to then invest in solutions, we actually handhold them through the process. We do construction oversight, and we have a pool of qualified contractors. So here's Laurie Burns, who had a Rain Ready Home. She actually had $70,000 worth of cumulative damage as a result of flooding. Her solution cost $4,850. And she had backwater valve, disconnected downspout, rerouted gutters, rain garden. And this is Dave Young and his wife. They had a Rain Ready Home solution for $1,700. We rated the landscape and a rain garden, and they haven't flooded since. And so we designed and tested the prototype. So we just wanted to get a model where we could start to do this very quickly, property by property, just like you do energy retrofitting, property by property. And so we've got to that stage, and year 2 we're going to be doing 45 assessments, 10 upgrades, but it looks as though we might have some big contracts with Cook County and potentially some other municipalities to start to do it at a much bigger scale. And at this stage we're looking at how do we better understand what the risks were that they faced and the value of our home upgrade. And we're also looking at whether or not we could actually accredit a home, so that when you sell your home, if it had been flooding and you previously had to do that, yes, I've been flooded, you could actually say, I'm now a rain ready home, so I'm protected to some extent. Rain ready community is really similar, but it does the same thing at community scale. So rain ready home is a component part of rain ready community. So it's based on the premise that there are low-cost solutions that you could do, otherwise known as green infrastructure, I tend not to use that word, such as bioswales, porous paving, green alleys, or whole town centre retrofits. And the process is that we go in and we help residents organise. So this is the group we're working with in Mid-Lothian. They're called Flood-Lothian, Mid-Lothian. They're a fantastic group of people. And this is a group of residents in Chatham, again, a wonderful mobilised community who went out there and organised an event, and they told their stories on video. So we get them to organise and then just start to document their problem. Making them feel empowered about their problem and how to fix it is really important. We've got them to write up chalkboards about the impact it had on them. We assess their properties, map the problems and opportunity areas, and then convene decision makers. We're about halfway through this process. So this is a wonderful meeting we had in Mid-Lothian, where the resident is up there at the back with the board actually saying, here's our problem and here's what's caused it. So she was explaining to the experts what the problem was. And we had all the agencies around there, MWRD, Army Corps of Engineers, IDOT, everyone, and they stood up one after the other and said, this is the most constructive meeting I've ever been to. And it was only because the residents felt empowered. And so we rain ready plan, which is what would come out of the community planning process, just outlines the problem, and maps it, and both the problems and potential solutions in individual properties as well as in the public rights of way, and then describes how to fund the solutions, how to install them, policies, incentives. In terms of where we are, we're halfway through completing plans both for Mid-Lothian and Chatham. We should have them both done by September. And we have had several municipalities who want us to do the same thing. So we're looking as though we're going to start scaling up quite quickly. And again, we'll be looking at, can we accredit a rain-ready community by, saying they've done this certain suite of practices, for example. And we're starting to have conversations with funders about taking the programme to other cities. And then the final thing is rain-ready alert. So one of the things that happens when it's flooding is that municipalities really have no idea what's going on. It's very, and homeowners have no idea. So at the point where we thought we might be at risk of flooding, I was under the floor trying to monitor, trying to figure out whether or not the sump pump was gone on, and my husband was up on the roof trying to clear the gutter. So, an hour before I'd been FaceTiming my daughter in England. So you have this incredibly sophisticated technology for so many things, and yet our home is so unsophisticated in terms of understanding our risk. So we wanted to figure out if there was a way that we could, or another example might be MWRD at the point where it's about to flood, they put out a press release that says, it's flooding, or it's likely to flood, please don't use your shower. And it just seems so unsophisticated. The correlation between risk and actions is just not that sophisticated. Not criticism, then it's just the technology. And so we're designing this sensor system. All our sump pumps are essentially, and our floor drains are essentially early warning systems. We just put sensors, connect them to the sump pumps. As they start the area, as the groundwater starts to rise, they go on and they're indicators of risk. If you then put sensors in, connect them to rain gauges, connect them to streams, and in the public rights of way, you start to get a network that can then be aggregated up, and then the homeowners could subscribe to a system that sends them an alert when a certain number of sump pumps have gone off. And so that's what we're designing at the moment. So it's an advanced real-time warning system, a sensor network. Our clients, we think, would be municipalities who want to understand where flooding is occurring within the community, and property owners themselves who want to know if their sensor has gone off or if their neighbours' sensors are going off. And our partners, we're currently exploring with Intel. Intel's doing some pro bono work for us at the moment, doing the kind of social research behind it to understand how homeowners respond to risk as it floods. So we hope to pilot it this autumn in Midlothian and then set up some kind of platform and subscription and licensing program. And then just the last bit, so all of this, if we find that working with flood victims, and this is kind of relevant to any work on sustainability, if you find people who are affected by lack of sustainability, what's the problem, and find the people affected by that problem, they are incredibly powerful advocates for the solutions. So we have got flood victims in meetings with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and the Commissioners now just kind of, we need to help these people now. You know, this is terrible, this is just chronic what's happening to them. So it's very powerful, and it's really helped us further legislation. We got some legislation passed last year called the Urban Flooding Awareness Act, which requires the state to do a study on urban flooding, and this year we're promoting the Home and Businesses Flood Protection Fund, which would require the state to set up a fund to help support the financing around Rain Ready Homes and Rain Ready Community. So that's it. Any questions? I don't know how I'm doing timing.
How are these funded now? These Rain Ready or whatever you call?
How are the pilots?
Yeah, who's paying for all this?
So at the moment it's largely charitable foundations.
Oh, it is.
Funding, yes. But our hope is that it would be counties. So I'm hoping that Cook County will help fund and then it's rolled out through some of this work through the disaster relief money that they have. So agencies are likely to be potential funders. And of course private property homeowners at the point where they want to upgrade their home. We're envisaging that they at least part fund some of that.
So like FEMA, they don't do any of that, do they? FEMA? It seems like it would be a proactive thing to do versus, waiting for the disaster.
Right. FEMA funding is difficult because it's strongly connected to traditional understanding of flood risk, i.e. the floodplain.
Okay.
So if you're not in an official floodplain, you're not seen as high risk, and so therefore they're not likely to fund you. That's it. I mean, they have been wonderful to us, and they are going to be funding some of our outreach next year. So they kind of know that it's a problem, but it's not one that they can really deal with.
So I'm familiar with Elevate Energy's programs. Is this something that you imagine Rain Ready to be similar to that, where you'd have, different product offerings, and then, any homeowner that experienced flooding can get the assessment and get the list of things to do and then implement them with a vetted contractor base, etc.?
Yes, I should have said, the program is actually being run by Elevate Energy.
Oh.
Rain Ready Home is being run by Elevate Energy, and it's using their whole model. I mean, they have this very rigorous process in place that allows them to go property by property in a very systematic way, in a way that CFT just doesn't have. And I thought, in the same way that home energy retrofitting is a national thing, our thought is that we could find national partners in other cities.
So is this the only thing happening nationally as far as like homeowner engagement and community?
There's no program like this. At the moment, there are programs that help people put in green infrastructure for conservation reasons. There's one in DuPage County. And there are other rain garden programs. There's not really a flood alleviation, home flood alleviation. So our starting point is what's the costs that you're currently paying as a result of your flooding, and what solutions can we put in place to help you manage it. There's no program like that at the moment with the first.
And is MWRD one of the main funders too, or is it just charitable foundations?
No, it's just charitable at this stage. And in fact, MWRD can't at the moment. They don't have the authority to fund anything on private property. They have their Rain Barrel program, but even that, I think it has to go through a municipality to be distributed.
And soil and water conservation, involvement from them?
Soil and water conservation?
Yeah, do they get involved with this at all?
Is that the name of an organisation?
Yes, yeah.
It's not real urban.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out who's involved with these programs. That's
Who's involved with?
Yeah, in general.
Who our partners are. So our partners.
Well, they have, I think they have a district there. So, they don't?
Yeah, if anyone has money to give, hold the money.
Oh, is it all MW curriculum completely?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
They don't have them.
Did you find it difficult to help get homeowners over the mental hurdle of feeling that this is purely a responsibility of them? That, you know, the fact that they're flooding, their assumption is that that's some failure of the local government to protect and manage the situation, so why should I invest my own money? After all, I pay taxes. Why isn't this just purely a public sector responsibility?
I guess we do, so we get this kind of strange mixture really, you know, so people who think it's their problem, even, actually, funny enough, even people, like my husband, when I first met him, said, I don't know why people make such a fuss about flooding, you know, it's just a little bit involved. And then I discovered, as I got to know him, he didn't go downstairs because he was so stressed by the mold that was growing. You know, so there's this kind of denial and it's all my fault. And then the other thing, which is it's all government's fault. And we don't really have to deal with it because we're just so focused on what's the solution. And it, you know, if they have the money, they're paying a cost for flooding, and if they have the money, then they will invest. And you know, at the moment, the barriers to investment are more they don't know what to invest in to protect their property. But we're also dealing with people who just can't afford it, you know, full stop.
Do either of your pilot communities have a stormwater utility? That would be a source of funding for the projects.
So our grand, we haven't kind of got it together yet. We need the services to really be robust and rolled out. But my kind of thinking is that the legislation, the Home and Business Flood Protection Fund, would be a state revolving fund that would give upfront loans, so give loans to municipalities who could then give upfront grants to homeowners that would be paid back through stormwater fees. That's what you were asking
Yeah.
about. And the reason that stormwater fees aren't introduced widely is they're so unpopular. But if you could connect it with getting upfront, that then seems to me an attractive way of trying to win that argument.
Yeah.
Yet untested.
Our community has a stormwater utility fee, and we have incentives for rain barrels and rain gardens, that sort of thing. But the entire orientation is from the city engineer's perspective of reducing the amount of water going to their pipes. It's not really oriented or considered to have anything to do with you know, people's basements and their individual flood, you know, small scale flooding.
Right.
I think there's an opportunity there to leverage the existing stormwater utilities to be more concerned with the individual homeowner.
Right, yes. I mean, I think those municipalities who have set it up have kind of, they set it up for water quality reasons.